Hello class, this is the invisible teacher and this is part 13 of the tutorials talks that I've been giving. Yes, now we looked at how Swinburne was I'm going to show you how Swinburne perhaps considered himself to be something of a diplomatic poet and involved in diplomacy. And I suggested earlier that Wordsworth too was in essentially saw himself essentially as a diplomat, and that may seem a very sweeping comment to make about Wordsworth, and some of you might have been very shocked. I did mention the lyrical ballads, and there was something of a revolutionary spirit rumoured about Wordsworth, but as I suggested, I think that his main job was to quell a revolution and to stop a revolution happening in England when it was happening at the time and had happened in France. I think that Wordsworth was genuinely interested in paganism, and we will go on to explore that perhaps later. But I think that as far as some of his poems go, he rather talks down to what he thinks poorer people might be interested to learn about. He does modify the language, of course. The poetry heretofore that was very flowery, used sometimes very flowery language, and Wordsworth did simplify the language. And that is very important, but as I say, I think he may have been doing it for diplomatic reasons, as well as offering a new text for people to read from the working classes. But I do feel as though many of the Wordsworth poems that I've read in the lyrical ballads, and maybe even with Michael, one of his most famous poems, is that he's trying hard to show empathy and sympathy even, but he doesn't quite manage it. Now, I want to read you really now. As I say, the poet Milton is mostly known for his poem Paradise Lost, though he did also write Paradise Regained. But I think his play Samson Agonistes is as well, like, really up there, really fantastic. And I just want to start by reading you, if I can, a passage, the opening passage, in fact, here, from Samson Agonistes. This is Samson speaking. A little onward lend thy guiding hand to these dark steps, a little further on, for yonder bank hath choice of sun or shade, where I am wont to sit when any chance relieves me from my task of servile toil. Daily in the common prison else enjoined me, where I, a prisoner chained, scarce freely draw the air imprisoned also, close and damp, unwholesome draught. But here I feel amends, the breath of heaven fresh blowing, pure and sweet, with day spring born, here leave me to respire. This day a solemn feast the people hold, to Dagon their sea idol, and forbid laborious works, unwilling this rest their superstition yields me, hence with leave, retiring from the popular noise, I seek this unfrequented place to find some ease to the body some, none to the mind, from restless thoughts, that like a deadly swarm of hornets armed, no sooner found alone, but rush upon me thronging, and present times past, what once I was, and what I am now. Oh, wherefore was my birth from heaven foretold twice by an angel, who at last in sight of both my parents all in flames ascended from off the altar where an offering burned, as in a fiery column charioting his godlike presence, and from some great act or benefit revealed to Abraham's race. Why was my breeding ordered and prescribed as of a person separate to God, designed for great exploits, if I must die, betrayed, captive, and both my eyes put out, made of my enemies the scorn and gaze, to grind in brazen fretters under task, with this heaven-gifted strength? O glorious strength, put to the labour of a beast, debased, lower than bondslave. Promise was that I should Israel from Philistinian yoke deliver. Ask for this great deliverer now, and find him eyeless in Gaza, at the mill with slaves, himself in bonds under Philistinian yoke. Yet stay, let me not rashly call in doubt divine prediction. What if all foretold had been fulfilled, but through mine own default? Whom have I to complain of but myself? Who this high gift of strength committed to me, in what part lodged, how easily bereft me, under the seal of silence could not keep, but weakly to a woman must reveal it. O'ercome with importunity and tears. Well, that was fantastic. I hope I did it some justice in the reading of it. What we do see in Milton is a real, so dense text in some ways, such meaning and empathy and exploration of arguments and reasoning and so on, but also it's really in some ways beautifully flowing and quick to read. It can be quick to read, and sometimes when you're reading it you don't quite grasp all of it. It's open to different readings depending on how you read it a lot, and it's really I want to go. I'm going to go on to talk about the Christmas Carol of Dickens, and to compare it and contrast it and relate it to the Christmas Carol of Swinburne, as we saw earlier. I think Dickens too does have real empathy, but Dickens certainly, there is a rumour that he might have mistreated his wife. Now, Milton, he had a wife, and according to what I learned a long time ago, he had 5 children. I don't know much about Milton's wife. I don't know whether any information is available to us on her. But to go back to Milton, we also see in there the shades of the prison house later in Keats and Wordsworth, but the prison of his own blindness as well, perhaps. Milton is rumoured to have been blind. I believe that Milton was blind. But I don't understand. One of the things I don't understand is how he could have written when he was blind. Did he have a secretary? Or someone who served as a secretary? Maybe it was his wife. I don't know. Maybe she would have been so busy with 5 children that she wouldn't have been able to help him in that regard. Maybe someone else had stepped in. Or maybe he somehow, there was a version of Braille available then. But it is quite miraculous. This is miraculous poetry. There is a rumour that later came out that I did read a novel about. The novel was called Milton in America. And there is some sort of rumour that he did go to America, but how he could have managed to do that, and I think this novel, if I remember correctly, does try to imagine him on the ship, with it going to take years and years to get to America and back again, and him being blind as well, and not knowing what he's going to find when he gets to America. I don't know whether that's true or not. But to return to the theme, well, to return to Samson Agonistes, what Milton is doing here, perhaps, is offering us a biblical story that also is in the context of his own story and the story of Paradise Lost, actually, because we see how that passage I read out to you before, about Satan, and why did God make me if I was going to be constrained and in chains and in prison and so on. We can see Milton exploring that again. So yes, that's a theme we will return to as well. But I want to say also, it is rather like Oedipus at Colonus as well. Now, Oedipus at Colonus is what I learned was the 3rd play in a trilogy by Sophocles. Sophocles was a great Greek playwright. Now, the thing is, really, most people remember the story of Oedipus, and Freud, concentrated on that. But actually, people were missing out a context. I learned certainly that Greek plays were normally trilogies. Well, the tragedies were. They came in threes. Now, the proper order, as I learnt it, was first of all there was Antigone, then there was Oedipus Rex, then there was Oedipus at Colonus of the three plays in the Oedipus trilogy. But now I see that according to many editions, publishers' editions of the trilogy, they are leaving Oedipus at Colonus, or which was a sublime kind of peacemaking in a way, and a kind of heaven when he got to an olive grove, and they're putting Antigone last in the trilogy, which opens up all sorts of different questions. But I'm going to give you a link to an audio version from Amazon of the Sophocles trilogy as I first encountered it. I didn't encounter it as an audio version, but I'm hoping that people who may be blind and who may be dyslexic, who are listening to this talk, might be able to access it too. Going on to which, oh yes, we do see as well that actually the Ballad of Reading Gaol and Oscar Wilde could also have something to do with this imprisonment later on. You know, Oscar Wilde may have been actually using Milton and have been remembering Milton. To go on to Helen Keller, I learned at primary school that Helen Keller invented Braille. Now I learned, according to the internet, that she was deaf and dumb. I didn't realise she was deaf as well. No, deaf and blind. I didn't realise she was deaf as well as blind. But she was the first person to get a degree, an arts degree at a university, when she was deaf and blind. I did learn that she had invented Braille, but now I'm going to post you a link up. Well, I'm hoping that you're seeing this link that directs you. If you type it in, I don't know whether you'll be able to follow it by clicking on it, but if you type it in, you should arrive at a site that suggests who might have invented Braille. A suggestion that it was invented by the military, and hopefully you will see, I don't know whether it's the correct version of Braille. I'm hoping it is the correct version of Braille. Right, I am going to leave it there for now, class. I hope to be with you again soon.